It was noontime today in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace.
Hello, Rye. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk about the end of the world as you know it. And I think basically there's a lot of things as preppers that, we all prepare for different things. We have a different vision of the world and how it's going to play out and whatever. But there's a lot of catastrophes that can happen and happen over and over, in different places. That might be wildfires. It might be, a big hurricane that comes in and hits Puerto Rico and tries to, cripple that territory there, and just different things that could happen. But also it could be financial collapse. It could be, governments that are oppressive and take over people. Could be you live in Ukraine and Russia decides to try and roll over you one day. And, the world can change, and it has throughout history. There's been big upheavals and stuff. And the longer we seem to go without anything bad happening, we tend to get like a complacency or well, that never happens. America, we've never seen bad things happen here, right? You can say, well, in Hawaii something bad happened once, but you know what I mean? It's just
Right.
we haven't, and we haven't seen it in our lifetime, our generation, the younger kids. Obviously there's some of you guys who maybe have been around since World War II and are sitting there going, well, I remember. And yeah, we don't. Okay.
I don't know if
But
they're listening to podcasts though.
they're not listening to and the hearing
knows?
aid. You might have to turn it up. I don't know. But Kevin, you're a horrible person. But that's the thing. There's a lot of different things that could happen out there. Kevin, you had a list of some of the causes that that might kind of cripple our nation.
Yeah. Let's run through some of them. So the first one I got on the list is cultural decay.
Mm,
Now
we
that
have
doesn't necessarily like mean people, everyone being dirty perverts and
because that's what I was thinking.
yeah. No, it's basically shared values and shared like narratives weaken. Like I think a lot of people view the United States as a culturally like a Judeo-Christian values,
Yeah.
And maybe some people view it that way and some people don't. Some people are less, I think the United States is getting less and less religious, maybe
Is
just
it
as spiritual,
Satan working
but
hard to undermine?
that's exactly what I was getting at. Yep. The devil is out there. He's real and he's coming for your kids.
He's coming for your babies. It was the
Mhm.
music. It started with Ozzy, didn't it?
It was Ozzy, all that evil metal that you and I used to listen to as youngsters. We were the cause of it, buying those albums, it
We
was us.
supported it. The
Uh-huh.
decline of America. Twisted Sister, I think, is the one the government was always afraid of.
Yeah.
That's the one.
To be probably the smartest person alive in the United States right now. Listen, go back on YouTube and find his interview with the Congress. Like,
Yeah.
he outsmarted all of them and made them all look foolish.
I know. It's funny when D's the smart guy in the room,
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Next one I got on the list, social decay. Like a mutual sense of collective meaning. We all kind of have that in the United States, democracy and republic and the Bill of Rights, free speech, all that sort of shit. We love it here, but and maybe this is just me and where I am in the internet, but I see a lot of people like memes and stuff that are kind of like anti-democracy now.
yes.
Like, I don't know where
those are Russian bots that are putting those out there. But
well,
I have no idea. That's what they always say. I don't know.
I've seen a lot like on libertarian pages about
how socialism is cool.
No, how democracy isn't great. Like, authoritarianism is not a libertarian value, but it seems like on libertarian pages, it seems to be pushed a little bit more often now.
That's how they got Hitler. Is that what?
Mm,
Oh, we're not allowed to say that on YouTube, I
don't
think.
say Hitler. No. Political decay. Now, this one is definitely going on in the United States. It's basically a uh, polarizing political factions. You know, um, you get a bunch of Republicans and a bunch of Democrats in the same room, and there's going to end up being a fist fight over dumb stuff. You know what I mean? But people are really adamant about, like, you're destroying the country, and they're both yelling it at each
Yeah,
other.
yeah. People do get very passionate, and they're very sure that their way is the only way.
Right.
And I just, I know you and me kind of butt heads on things a little bit politically, and I think that's what makes the show interesting is,
Hmm.
we have a different perspective, but the point is it's cool when we can all be civil with each other and have a
Right.
discussion, right? Hey,
Right.
this is what I think and this is why. And
Hmm.
then you start to see, well, there's a little different perspective that maybe
There's
I didn't catch,
Yeah, there's a
or
little
whatever,
gray
right?
here. I mean, there's
Right,
always, but people
right.
see things more and
But
more in black and
I
white,
I
where it
was
has
I
to be
was
my way.
listening to this, me and my buddy who again were different politically, and we were going on a road trip, and we're talking. We went to the gathering, the Palmetto State Armory thing, and we're driving, and he's like, well. I listen to one type of music and you listen to another. I'll put on Fox News and whatever. And I'm like, I don't know why you'd go there because I wouldn't put on Fox News in my truck, but
Right.
whatever. But okay, so that was the compromise, and we're listening, and they're talking about healthcare, and you have one side, like they actually had like a hardcore left person debating with like a hardcore right person, and they're just
Hmm.
talking back and forth about it, and just like it's all like snarky comments, and
Right.
none of it is like
No
any
productive.
productive
Yeah.
discussion, right? But the funny thing was the guy on the left goes, well, the problem is you can't have some clown in Washington telling the people in Wisconsin what they need to do with their schools. He can't know. We need to get Trump to leave the Department of Education alone so they can make the decisions for Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you see what you did there?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they didn't even say Trump was the problem. They said people in Washington, and then they said Trump.
Right.
And I'm like, but the Department of Education, that's kind of his whole thing is people in Washington. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand you're saying, well, he's going to cut funds, and that's a whole other debate. But the idea was he kind of said, well, I don't like the remote thing. Let's let the states do their thing.
Right.
Kind of. I mean, that's the bigger picture, right? We can get into the semantics. That isn't my point. I just thought it was funny that they're like, Washington's bad. We need Washington to run it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that
Exactly.
doesn't,
Exactly. Yeah.
but
But
anyway.
I as stupid as this sounds, like if you go to like a left leaning website or a left leaning news show, TV show,
Yeah.
they always have a stupid conservative on there making stupid
The
points. And if you
dumbest,
go to the opposite side, like the right wing thing, they
100%.
always got an idiot
The
liberal
dumbest guy.
making
Yeah.
stupid comments. But it
And then
is what
you're
it
like,
is.
see, they're all idiots. And that's how we get divided. And maybe
Exactly.
it's just that everybody on the news or in Washington are all idiots. And maybe that's the
I
problem.
think that's the biggest issue we have. Right.
That's why we keep thinking, well, the other side's full of idiots. Well,
Hmm.
maybe if we're leaving these people in charge, maybe we're
We're
the
the idiots. Yeah. I think
yeah.
we're the fools. All right. Next one on the list is commercial decay. You don't see this too much in the United States. This is basically like commercial networks are fragmenting. We
Mhm.
have pretty good um infrastructure in the United States as far as shipping, trains, cars, all that sort of stuff, trucks. Um, so far that's all going good, but rich people want to keep being rich, so that's important to them.
Yeah.
That's not gonna change until things really start getting bad. The other one is financial crisis or financial decay. So that's like financial crisis is looming. Financial collapses, the stock market dropping out,
Mhm.
people losing their homes, losing their jobs, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's definitely potential for that. I think with AI is actually taking a lot of jobs, and we're going to see jobs disappearing, but not being replaced with other, you know,
Yeah,
other
but
ways to make
Kevin,
money.
remember AI is going to create all kinds of products and awesomeness. And then that way there's just going to be more abundance. Like you're going to just walk down the
Right.
street and find iPhones laying
We
there
can
because AI is just going to be
we can
spitting them
just
out.
live in a state of paradise,
Yeah.
and iPhones will grow on trees, and you know, apples maybe
And yeah,
actually fruit growing on tree. I don't know. I don't know how
who
that works out.
knows?
AI is just making technology. It's not making food to fill my belly yet.
No, and it turns out maybe it's just the rich, smart guys, and they're just like using AI for their own.
Yeah, and they're just
Now,
getting
mind
richer and
you,
richer.
AI's open source and you can go use it for you.
Mhm.
I keep seeing posts on my Facebook that I can use it to win the stock market. I just have to apply myself.
Right.
I haven't done this, but
Mhm.
I've heard
You heard
the
about it.
posts. It
Yeah.
definitely it says I can. So
Well,
I'm just saying.
don't buy Tesla right now.
No, that's a no
That's
go.
not a wise investment at this point, but um population collapse. So that's uh not really an issue in the United States. Obviously, countries like Japan, China, Russia are having issues with this, where their birth rates are falling. Um, a lot of the time, you fix this by bringing in, immigrants,
Yeah.
but that just leads to more social and cultural decay. You know what I mean?
And decay, like you said, it doesn't mean it's necessarily bad by world standards, but you don't stay true to what the foundation of something was. Like
Right.
honestly, we could bring in a bunch of great people who are better values than where we are,
Hmm.
but it changes, it shapes into something else, and that's
Right. Right. And it, causes instability. Loss of social complexity. This one is it's basically I'm basically talking about government systems breaking down.
uh,
Um, you know, uh Social Security, um, Medicaid, um, social safety nets, unemployment. You go
okay.
lose your job, you go to unemployment. Sorry, we don't have any money. you know,
I
that's
would
not
have
happening.
given you some, but
Oh, you thought you were gonna retire, but your 401k collapsed last week, and Social Security stopped sending out checks.
yeah, yeah, that was the latest big scandal. My wife saw it on the news. I didn't see anything that Social Security checks were like a day late or something, or that's what she heard. I don't know. We
Hmm.
don't get a Social Security check, so I don't really know.
Yeah,
I
and
don't have
probably not gonna
firsthand
get one.
knowledge.
Yeah.
But it was just like, and they're, oh, the world's ending, and then they're like, is somebody just trying to make more chaos? Is
Yeah.
that the world and instability? Because it just, man, we can't catch a break, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely one of those things. It's a little bit disappointing because we've all been seeing huge chunks of our paycheck going to Social Security every,
Forever, right?
forever. And then when you get old, it might not be around anymore.
No, because we were going to put it in a lockbox, I think is what they used to say in Congress.
That's what they did. And then
It's in a
but they had to take a
lockbox.
little bit out,
Oh,
to
the
help
box was
cover
getting
some of
full.
this.
And they were
Yeah.
like, well, it's not going to
There's
fit.
not room anymore. We have to take a little bit out. And then they took a little bit more out. And then they took a little bit more out. And now
The
the
lockbox
money I
isn't
pay
so
in Social
full.
Security is going to somebody collecting Social Security right now instead of the money that they actually put in. So, blame it on your politicians. Vote them all out.
Kevin. Yeah.
Rise of violence.
Oh.
That's the next sign.
Now that seemed very concerning. We were getting the whole, like, all the different groups that were angry and protesting and destroying Portland, and we were like really heading that way with all these like crazy. And then that's kind of backed off, or do they just not report on it because it's old news now? What do we?
No. Well, I mean,
I guess we're burning Teslas. I mean, there is that.
I would 100% say that there's like, been a drop off in violence, in the past 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
But, in the last 5 months, we've had a CEO assassinated, right?
We had
Somebody
that.
went on a rampage driving their truck through New Orleans streets.
That did happen.
Car bomb outside of a casino in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And then, obviously we've seen a few Tesla dealerships firebombed. Summer's coming. It's getting hotter every day.
They don't go out in the cold, huh? Is that what it is? Times are
No, I mean,
quiet. So now that Trump's back in, it might, yeah.
No, that's an actual thing. As the weather warms up, people get more violent. The hottest summers always have the most violence, and
they say, I'm just sick of this heat. And they go out
and they lose their shit. I mean, if it's 10 degrees out, you're not fucking going outside. You're gonna stay in your house, you know. But when it's 80, get out there. You got to rip that t-shirt off.
Yeah,
you know,
pull the sleeves off. I'll show them who's boss.
Show them what's what. Yeah, got to show everybody what's what.
Kevin, this crazy world we live in.
Well, I mean, I am serious though. I think that this summer is going to be there's going to be a lot of violence this summer, and we're going to see what happens, what shakes out. But
I don't like your attitude, Kevin.
Little. We'll
Those
see.
are scary
Maybe
predictions.
I'm making a stupid prediction, but
there you go.
I see it.
Right.
I see it. So what do you got here?
So yeah. So then the thing is, right? So you outlined a big list of why the world might collapse, but what actually happens after it collapses?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so things get bad, and I obviously, what is collapse? Who knows, right? Like obviously, all these different things are different. Usually, in my mind, collapse is when there's no electricity, no, whatever, and all of a sudden, no, basically government services, right? That's what I think of as collapse. But what if it's just things get really crappy? Like you just can't afford anything. Like every family is kind of like rationing food, and some families don't have any food to ration, and they start breaking into houses to get theirs, or mugging people a little bit more, or whatever they do to get theirs, right? Because when you have hungry babies at home, you're willing to do a little bit more than you were willing to do before, right?
Pampers are expensive, man.
Those diapers aren't going to buy themselves, so that's fair. So I think that's it. And there's just different levels. So what happens first? So I think it's just that it's all of a sudden crime starts to go up, and because people are getting desperate and they feel pressure, and I think people start to feel like a hopelessness, that kind of thing. Where
if you're working 60 hours a week and you still can't afford your rent, people get a little bit desperate when things like that happen.
Right. So you get, what is it? They say like rising tension. Then all of a sudden you start getting like supply chain disruptions. And I think these are signs to it coming kind of thing, but they're warning signs, right? The precursors. And so you have supply chain disruptions. Like you go to the store and eggs are super expensive, and there's a sign that says only 1 dozen a person. Like that might happen in a future crazy world.
Yeah,
right?
Some sort of crazy world.
Right, in crazy world. And, all of a sudden then government's like, hey, people are starting to get out of control. We might need to implement a little bit more stricter laws and certain things. And we need to, maybe we'll put a curfew where we don't want people out after 9 o'clock at night. Or we don't want, different things. And people just kind of are like, yeah, but, life will go on. That's okay. I'm willing to give up a little bit of freedom because that's a 200-year-old law, centuries old.
Right.
So why would we even care about that one? We don't need to worry about it. This is the modern world, Kevin. All right. Then you have all of a sudden, like something might happen, right? Like a catastrophic event. And that sets things off, and this is when you start getting like widespread panic and confusion and, banking failures. The power grids goes down, something like that, or the internet goes down. I mean, imagine that world. I mean, how much would it shut down if we just lost the internet for even, a day? I don't think the world would end. I mean, we would definitely feel it. But I don't think the world would end. But imagine if the internet went down for like 5 days.
Yeah.
What kind of chaos, that would bring. it gets bad. You'd have riots, looting, breakdown, and obviously, if the power went out, these same things would be happening. If water shut off, could you imagine water shutting off at the municipal services for whatever reason?
Yeah.
That's a big deal, right? Government
Fully
imposed.
stocked. I just have to drink beer and whiskey for a week.
Okay.
I'd be all right.
We all make sacrifices,
Yeah.
Kevin, and that's that's where you thrive, right? People would start to go out of the cities and go to the country. Oh, everything's better on the farm, right? That's so first it's like I'm gonna go to grandma's farm and stay with grandma and whatever, because she's got those chickens and we'll get the eggs there. I don't even need the eggs from the store because grandma's always got a couple in the basket, and that works at first. But not everybody has a grandma in the country anymore, especially, nowadays it's getting more and more where people, so I think you have that, escape from the city, the mass exodus, and then that kind of thing. Then I think people start going into like survival mode. And this would be, when there really is shortages of food, water, medicine. So people kind of hunker down, like you said, and just kind of, I got to take care of their own. At this point, people are probably not maybe going to work. A lot of people, or just some people, the essential workers, right?
Essential workers, right?
And companies are starting to lay off. And this is not
It's interesting how all the essential workers that we have are all like minimum wage people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're not paid so high. Yeah, no. And that's the thing. It's like, well, where are they getting gas? Where are they? But you gotta have the waitress. That was the thing. Like they had like coffee shops as essential workers, I think, during COVID. And I'm like,
liquor stores were essential.
It's weird what our priorities are. So yeah. And believe it or not, if this is like a prolonged event, you start to have disease, stuff going up, struggles, as people aren't getting they're not making their doctor visits. They can't get there. They don't have the gas money. They can't afford to pay the doctor. I mean, doctors are not cheap. You probably haven't noticed this, any of you, but you go to the doctor, it might be kind of expensive. I think you might have noticed. I just think that,
Yeah. I think one of the interesting ways about the way our healthcare system is set up is it's tied to your work. So if you get sick and can't work anymore, you lose your health insurance and you're just fucked all the way around.
Right. And then all of a sudden, if everybody's applying, like, hey, we need the government healthcare, and they're all like, yeah, we can't, because the government's cutting back at this point because they're starting to have problems and tax revenue's not coming in, and things start
revenues down, man. Everybody lose their jobs, stop paying taxes.
So all of a sudden, the government starts to cut out people. I've never heard of that happening, shrinking government. Wait, is that happening right now? All right. So then all of a sudden, as the government starts to feel like they're losing a grip, you start to get that authoritarian, like, you know what, we got to take charge. We need police. We need to start, stepping up our game. And we got to really, once you let one or two of them get out of line, we're going to devolve into complete chaos. So they switch it and they start. But also then in the rural areas, you're going to have like more barter, that kind of thing going on, barter economy, stuff like that. People are going to start to be armed more often. People might start setting up like a militia to kind of guard their neighborhood, right? If there's
it's a community watch. It doesn't mean anything. It's supposed to be. We're watching, and we've got automatic weapons now,
right?
And
maybe you park a car at the end of your cul-de-sac, and there's maybe a shotgun on the front seat and maybe a gun in your belt, and you have two guys stand there every night for the week, and they just kind of rotate and keep an eye on the neighborhood. Maybe that kind of thing starts to happen. Maybe gangs start to get together and they look for the neighborhoods that don't have a watch. And they start to like, hey, let's break into those houses. Let's go get ours. Yeah. Hey, police are so busy and overwhelmed. I can kind of go do what I want and go have my way with people.
Well, I mean, honestly,
brutality. Yeah.
A lot of those a lot of those neighborhood watches kind of become gangs. You know what I mean? A lot
Yeah.
of the gangs that you see in the United States, MS-13, the Crips, the
That was the
Bloods,
neighborhood watch?
they all started as people that were protecting their community. And then they had to get a little bit of revenue, you know, you get
Hey,
some
Kevin, the
income.
price is right, you know? You gotta
And
take care of your people.
yeah, shit starts happening, you know?
Um,
I mean,
I
this kind of brings me to one of the points I wanted to talk about was the idea of a mafia state.
oh,
You know, Syria was kind of like that. It's
the
basically
Black
when,
Panthers.
you know, yeah, it's kind of when um the government is tied to organized crime, you know, and there's one guy up there that's getting all the income and kind of redistributing it to the people that need it. You know, somebody's got
Yeah,
to take care of the old ladies, the widows, the orphans.
there
You know,
you
somebody's
go.
got to take care of those people, but you got to have the income coming in. You know, and yeah, and Stillborn just mentioned that Black Panthers started a breakfast program. They were feeding like tens of thousands of kids every day.
They were
You know,
absolutely
and
trying to take care of their neighborhood
yeah,
in
you
the
could
in the
really,
start,
you know,
no
talk a
doubt.
lot of shit about the Black Panthers, but there's a lot of good they did that nobody ever brings up, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, that sort of stuff though, um, it can be good for the people that are in that community, but can it also be bad for the people that are outside of those groups, you
Yeah.
know, and that polarization, you know, that's kind of I mean, that's kind of what led up to the Civil War in the United States, you know? The South and the North had very different ideals, you know,
Mhm.
different ideas on how the government should run. And you know, it it wasn't great. Wasn't great for the United States. A lot
Yeah.
of people got killed over that.
That's one of the things though too, I hate to say it, and we're seeing it a lot with the whole right and left leaning people now is people feel that their voices aren't being heard.
Mhm.
And that was, you know, you mentioned with the Civil War, that was the thing. The South was like, we voted as a block one way, and our opinion didn't matter in any way.
Right.
And that really, I mean, obviously slavery, these things were a big part of it, but the people were so frustrated that they're like, we're here and desperate, and nobody's addressing our situation and what's going on.
Mhm.
And that made for a big, you know, a big issue, right? Because this was still their livelihood and they didn't have the industrial north. They were, you know, we
It
need
was a
people
rural
working
farming
and physical
area. Yeah.
labor. And yeah, so it just, they really felt unheard. And as much as it's a completely different culture and world now, people still, and I think media amplifies it, they feel like they're not represented or heard. They're like,
Right.
we don't understand. Everybody I talk to agrees with me and hates Elon, and therefore we don't understand why this guy's making all these decisions. And then you have people on the other side of the aisle who are like, Elon is our savior. Look at him saving all this money and putting it back in the coffers.
Mhm.
And it's just, and you have the push and pull, but you're both being filled a different narrative of
Right.
what's actually happening, you know,
Mhm.
and it's so hard to sort through and decide what's true and what's real. And every news story I hear is this person said this, but you never hear that person say it. And maybe they are, but it's always like, and it's, well, they said it, but I rephrased it because I know what they really meant.
What they meant was, yeah.
What they meant was this. And
Mhm.
you know what, to be honest, they may be right. You know, when you say that, that may be true, but it just, it creates a narrative, and it creates fear, and it creates, you know, a lot of stuff going on that, you know, can be kind of bad. So just take that into a grain of salt, with a grain of salt, as we all start to get divided and, you know, turn against each other, you know.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah, if I could make a recommendation to everybody to make for a happier life, I would kill your TV and
okay.
you know, find your own playlist of music. Don't listen to the news stations, man.
Oh,
They're trash.
my
They're
wife
trash.
gets
Read a
kind of
fucking
angry that
newspaper if
I've
you want
been
the news.
listening to the same songs for 20 years. She's
Mhm.
like, you know, new music has come out. And I'm like, has it? Has it really? Because I've turned on the radio and that ain't what I want. That's not, that's a no-go. So
Yeah.
maybe that's wrong. I think in the country, another thing I was going to touch on is, the knowledge of skills of hunting and farming and treating your own medical needs. These things all of a sudden start to come valuable commodities, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
one, farming, right? Me having eggs, me having produce that shows up and is fresh and not rotten and whatever. All of a sudden, that's kind of pretty cool when I go to the grocery store and it costs me a couple $100. Having the backyard grocery store is pretty cool.
yeah,
Bagging a deer, having, deer in the backyard, that's not a bad way to be. These things become more valuable. And the same thing, medical skills, right? How often have we talked about, if you can do those stitches at home instead of going to the doctor or things like that, solve your own problems, recognize when some kind of sickness is really a big deal or not. I understand there's great testing equipment and all this stuff at the doctor's office, but maybe that's the right answer. You don't know what's right. But the bottom line is the more things that you can accurately handle and diagnose on your own level, the local level, it's going to be so much better. And to be honest, if your neighbor's a doctor or a nurse practitioner or something like that, and you can be like, hey, I got eggs and I can give you a ham if you come over. And the doctor
yeah,
might be like, you know what, my family could use some food and some, let's make a deal.
yeah.
I
Well, I
come
know
talk to you.
my
I have a little black bag that I can carry. And
mhm.
anyway,
The lady down the street,
yeah,
I have allergies during the spring, and the
yeah.
lady down the street, told me that she had some like holistic, all
Ooh,
natural stuff. So I got the rest of the neighborhood together when we burned her at the stake. You don't
nice.
want those witches out there
No, no
trying to
witches.
treat you. Yeah.
You're smart, Kevin. You got to nip that in the bud. Now, I talked to my doctor and he's like, oh, I mean, you guys probably hear like sometimes in the podcast, me and Kevin are like sniffling or whatever. I feel like that's the whole world. We're like,
Yeah.
yep, yep. And, that's how it is. But so I go to the doctor and he's like, and I'm like, yeah, take Zyrtec or whatever, I don't know, fight the little. He's like, you can buy these whole bunch and stack them all together and take all these drugs.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, that might be what's right for you. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh,
Just
that's the
take
world
all
I
the
want to
drugs.
live in. Just take all the
Yeah.
chemicals. Or we could not burn the witch at the end of the street
And
and see what she
just hear her
has.
out.
Hear her
See
out.
what's
I
there.
mean, that's the other way to go, right, Kevin?
Uh,
Hey, you do you, right? But that's all of a sudden where you start to become pretty cool at the prepper stuff and the self-reliance. And, and that's the thing, like we talked about, how many times have we talked about having water storage or having a way to get water, right? If that shuts down, that security that you get from that is so great. Um, Having the tools to protect yourself if somebody home invasion, robberies, that kind of thing, as people get more desperate, being able to protect your home, having your yard set up where you kind of where your house doesn't look like a victim house, right? When they go through and they see there's nowhere to really hide as I sneak up to that house and they have lights on kind of around the yard, that's going to be less likely of a target than the house that looks completely dark and there's shrubs and things I can hide and I can sneak up on them. And, that guy's going to be way more the victim than somebody who looks like they have it together. Now, mind you, if they can't see your house at all, then maybe that's better. But,
mhm.
you have to find that balance. But the more all these skills that we've learned as preppers really start to come into play as these things play out. And basically, as money dries up and people get more desperate, these prepper skills are going to make you more and more valuable. And honestly, having a freezer full of meat because you bagged a couple of deer this year, that's going to put you ahead of the game. Or if you had a freezer
Right.
full of rabbits, I'm just
Mhm.
saying they fill up quick, the rabbits. I'm just putting that out there. When meat gets tight, that was always one of the things was they were like, yeah, we're going to get everybody to stop eating meat because they won't be able to afford it. I mean, I don't hear people talking like that now as much anti-meat, but that was what they were saying 10, 15 years ago.
Hmm.
And remember, we
Yeah.
want them to all eat bugs and whatever. And the way to get people off meat, we're just going to collapse it. Well, has it happened? Has it happened where meat is way more expensive than what people want to pay?
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting there, you know. I just
Mhm.
even though nobody's talking about it now.
Yeah, I bought a
Then,
brisket yesterday. It was $11.99 a pound. Like,
dude,
what the
all the
hell?
time, it's crazy. Yeah, I'm like, oh, here's like 2 nights worth of steak, $35. And I
Yep.
mean, I'm not talking like nice cuts. I'm just saying like, whatever,
Hmm.
just the minimum. And yeah, no, it's not. And yeah, you're in the burger neighborhood. Burgers like $6 a pound or
Yep.
$7 a pound. It's not a
Just keeps
pretty
going
world
up. It
out
ain't
there.
going down. You know?
No. But then you start to really get that barter culture. We start to like come back after, and things start to get established into a new way of living. But I gotta say, it's kind of going back to the older ways. I mean, you think of like Depression era and things like that, where communities tended to rely on each other and network and find out who's the guy who knows and who can, help me out. That really comes into play. And we start to get back to that world. So hopefully the whole feudal lord and isolating like ourselves into groups and it doesn't turn that way. But I gotta say, society over and over again, these things play out. So that's all. So anyway, it'd be awesome if you guys like, subscribe, if you appreciated this content and enjoyed it. If you have show ideas, things you want to tell us, preppingbadass@gmail.com. Kevin, you have something? You look like you wanted to tell me something. No, you're
That's
good.
it.
All right. Then I would say stay safe and we will talk to you guys next week.